Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Well, we'll come to the question and answer time here in just a moment. I would like to receive the offering now. Ask you to, if you appreciate having people like Dinesh come to town, that you would help me by supporting it and contributing. Make out your checks to Cedar Park Church, if you will, and you'll get your tax-deductible receipt, but you'll also help to advance this kind of effort. So ushers, come wait upon us, please, for the offering this evening. I do thank you very much for being a participant in this way. And don't forget to drop your visitor card in the offering there as well, so that we can know that you've been our guest today. If you don't have a business just use a business card or something else, and some way to let us know who you are. Ushers, thank you very much. You can receive the offering. The way I'd like to do this, we've got half an hour or thereabouts. We'll take questions. I'll have you stand where you are. I'll hear the question and repeat it, and then you can be the answer man. So grab a drink of water there, and because we wouldn't want you to be dry. And let's go about doing this here. First of all, I want to thank you for coming out. I know with your getting a new university or college president post, you were up to your eyeballs in work. And for you being willing to come out and join us here on the left coast, and to, as they say, but thank you very much for doing all of that. But let's take some questions here. Okay, Kirby, you're the man of the hour. You got your hand up there. Ask it from there. You got a big voice. We can hear you. Indeed.
Thank you, Kirby.
Okay, I'll repeat the question. Kirby notes that President Obama did not have all of the experiences of growing up in America. I think you said this morning that he never set foot on American soil until he was 17, mainland soil. And so does that scenario offer any analysis?
Obama had a most unusual childhood. His father was a very strange guy. He was a polygamist. He had 4 wives and 8 known children. He was also, he looked after none of them, by the way. He was also a chronic drunk driver. He had multiple disastrous accidents, killed a man in one of them, hurt himself so badly in another, both his legs had to be amputated. So in the last years of his life, he would bounce around on 2 iron legs. Eventually, he got drunk in a bar in Nairobi and drove straight into a tree, killing himself. Now, here's the amazing thing. You think someone like that, who abandoned Obama's mother, would be absolutely the last person to be a role model for Obama. However, Barack Obama Sr.'s great convert was not Obama. It was Anne Obama, Ann Dunham. She was his great defender. And Obama says that whenever he criticized his dad, his mom shut him up and said, no, don't worry about his failures. He was a great man of Africa. Interestingly, even though he abandoned her, what did she do? She found another anti-colonial guy, Lolo Soetoro, who was raised in Indonesia. His home had been burned by the Dutch, and she thought he was going to be another Obama. She carts Barack Obama to Indonesia, and then something amazing happens. Soetoro becomes more pro-Western when he goes home. He begins to work for the Suharto government. He works for an oil company, and Obama in his book quotes his mom attacking her new husband and saying, you sellout, you bum, you're not like Barack Obama. He was uncompromising. And she tells her son, "You be like your real father, not like this guy." She divorces Satoru and packs up young Obama at the age of 10 and sends him back to his grandparents. Why? To keep him away from the influence of his stepfather so that he can be influenced by his real father. The bottom line of it is Obama had a very strange childhood. We think of him as raised by a single parent. He says, raised by my mom. He was not raised by his mom. His mom sent him back at the age of 10. She didn't go with him. She stayed in Indonesia. He was then raised by his grandparents in Hawaii, and they looked for a series of surrogate fathers to look after Obama. One of them, by the way, was the former communist Frank Marshall Davis, a guy who would sit around in Hawaiian shirts and denounce America. So Stanley Dunham, Obama's grandfather, would sit with Davis, both in their Hawaiian shirts, playing Scrabble, while little Obama sat in the corner and listened to these denunciations of America. So the point I'm trying to make is our president, whom I think it's fair to say is the most unknown guy ever to set foot in the White House, has had a most unusual background. And his foreignness to me is not a criticism. It's a way of saying that his background has got to be understood. All of us are trying to project, even I was, American history onto Obama, and we're ignoring Obama's history. So that's one of the things that my book does that is making the White House nervous. It literally opens the door on Obama's history. And if people say, Dinesh, where are you getting these weird theories? My answer is, from Obama. Read his book.
But Dinesh, is the fact, as Kirby noted, you don't play baseball as a kid growing up. You don't watch the programs about family and, all the stuff that we're part of. I mean, you had that same experience. You arrived here at 17, same as Obama arrives on the mainland at age 17. You turned out the way you did. Do you think that the things that he studied in school, for example, in Hawaii, did that have an influence on his view of America, do you think?
It is true. One of the striking things about Obama is how utterly abominable the reporting and coverage has been of Obama. Not only are major topics ignored, but when incriminating information is brought forward, it's deliberately covered up by the media. So for example, if you pick up Saturday's New York Times, on page 12 in the front section, there's a banner headline. There's a big picture of me, picture of my forthcoming book. But if you read the article, you would get the idea that the main theme of my book is that Obama was not born in America. He was born in Kenya. Not only do I not say this anywhere, but I flatly reject it in the book. I say, if you look at Obama, in August of 1961, there was a notice in 2 Hawaiian newspapers that Obama was born. That for me is adequate evidence that the guy was born in Hawaii. But my point is the New York Times knows this, but they're deliberately trying to create a false argument that I'm some sort of a birther because they don't want to deal with my more effective argument, which is not about where Obama was born, but where he gets his values and his worldview and his ideas. You are right that I went back to his school in Hawaii, the Punahou School, and looked at the reading lists that Obama had to study in his classes in history. And it's true, it reads almost like a history, it's almost like oppression studies. One book is on the Japanese internment in World War II. Another book is on America's genocide of the Indians. A third book is on slavery, a history. So if you put it all together, it gives a very consistent picture. By the way, this is not unique to Hawaii. You can get this at Columbia and probably in good schools right here in Seattle. This idea of a history of America that looks at America not as a land of liberation opportunity, not like the founders did, but looks at it as a series of uninterrupted crimes visited on people. But I don't think Obama's root comes from what he read. I think it comes from his dad, and through his life, he searched for surrogate leaders and dads to fill in that vacuum. If I can give one other example of what I mean, the Reverend Jeremiah Wright. Now, here's the facts of the situation. Obama was an activist in Chicago, and he was working with the churches. And pastors would say to him, so where do you go to church? Obama says himself he would hem and haw. Why? Because he didn't go. So finally, someone said to him, hey, Obama, go find a church. It looks bad that you don't have a church. Doesn't matter whether you want to go or not. Go check out this Jeremiah Wright's church. So Obama goes, and he describes it himself. He says, I was outside of Trinity Church, and I saw a sign in the lawn that said, Free South Africa. Free South Africa. Right away, Obama's international anti-colonial antenna go up. Free South Africa. Wow. He goes in. He sees a man in a dashiki African outfit. Now, the Reverend Jeremiah Wright is a complicated character. He's one part Afrocentrist, one part scam artist, and 4 parts anti-colonialist. Obama ignored the first 2. What attracted to him was the third, Wright's anti-colonialism. What's so funny about all this is that in America, Wright was covered as a civil rights guy, a black activist. But if you actually read what Wright was saying, when he said, goddamn America, when he said, what was he talking about? He's not talking about race. He said, we bombed Libya, we invaded Grenada, we killed Gaddafi's son, we invaded Iraq. He's talking about American foreign policy. And yet, when that became a scandal, what does Obama do? He gives a speech on race relations. He says, we've never really had a complex discussion of race relations in this country. The Reverend Jeremiah Wright wasn't talking about race relations. He was talking about America, the rogue elephant stampeding around the world. This was about foreign policy and anti-colonialism. Obama very deftly converts it into some sort of seminar on race relations, and all of us say, wonderful speech, Martin Luther King all over again, let's let the topic pass. It was a brilliant case of mirrors of going from the real topic, anti-colonialism, to making it a race issue so he could claim an exemption on it. So this is, in a way, a very skilled leader, in my opinion, but a leader whose real motives are over here, and his skill is in being able to, think about it. Imagine if I was an anti-colonialist, but most of you haven't even heard of colonialism. Most Americans don't know what that is. How can I get elected to the most powerful office in the land with an agenda that has nothing to do with what Americans even care about? You've got to be really skilled in translating those ideas in a way that ordinary Americans go, that sounds right. That's what Obama's really good at.
Well, it really comes out, don't you think, a question of not just anti-colonialism, but against power, against economic power, against military power, against the banks, against Wall Street, against the insurance companies, and one gets laid over the top of the other. Would you think that would be correct?
I think if you look at Obama's rhetoric, you can see right away why he is much more of an anti-colonialist than a socialist. What does a socialist care about? A socialist cares about the poor, uplifting the poor. And I've heard socialists talk and they become emotional. Even John Edwards, when he talked about the poor, there was genuine passion and emotion. I have never heard Obama give a speech about the poor, not one. When he mentions the subject, it's like he's reading from his tax return. It's emotionless. Now, what does get Obama excited? Not the poor. It's bringing down the guys on the top. You mentioned pharmaceutical companies, he gets visibly agitated. You mention a BP, he wants to kick their butt. When you're talking about Wall Street, he wants to bring them to heel. So he's passionate about pulling down the high and mighty, not so much about bringing up the guy at the bottom. Now, what does that tell you? That tells me his goal isn't socialism. It's an antagonism to the neo-colonial class that he sees as the exploiters of the people. Another very valuable clue along the same lines is by looking at Obama's environmental policies. He gave a speech at the UN in which he said, America consumes far out of proportion of our share of the world's resources. We are leaving a big carbon footprint on the world. And that sounds like Al Gore. Al Gore might say that. But then Al Gore would say that the people who are leaving the biggest carbon footprint on the world is China.